Imagine yourself walking through a dense, ancient forest at dusk, the kind where the light filters through the leaves in golden shards, casting long shadows that seem to whisper secrets from the earth itself. The air is thick with the scent of moss and rain-soaked soil, and every step you take stirs up a quiet rustle that echoes like forgotten memories stirring in the back of your mind. This is the world of the empath, the one who feels not just their own heartbeat, but the pulse of everything around them, the unspoken sorrows of strangers, the hidden joys of the wind. But what happens when that empath heals? Not the fairy tale version where they emerge as some invincible light worker, glowing with untouchable serenity, but the raw, transformative truth that Carl Jung, the great explorer of the human psyche, hinted at in his profound writings. It's not what you think. It's deeper, darker, and infinitely more powerful. Stay with me as we journey into the shadows and light of the soul, uncovering what a healed empath truly becomes. A force that reshapes not just their own life, but the very fabric of the world they touch. Let's begin at the roots, where it all starts. Picture a child, wide-eyed and trembling, in a crowded room filled with laughter and arguments swirling like a storm. This child doesn't just hear the words, they absorb the undercurrents. The sharp sting of unspoken resentment from a parent, the fragile hope flickering in a friend's smile, the heavy weight of exhaustion from the stranger across the way. This is the unhealed empath, a vessel overflowing with the emotions of others, often drowning in them without knowing how to swim. Carl Jung, that Swiss psychiatrist whose ideas pierced the veil between the conscious and the unconscious, would recognize this as the archetype of the sensitive soul, one attuned to the collective unconscious, that vast ocean of shared human experiences and symbols that binds us all. But in their wounded state, empaths become sponges, soaking up pain until they're saturated, leading to isolation, burnout, or even a quiet desperation that masks itself as chronic fatigue. You felt it, haven't you? That moment when someone else's grief hits you like a wave, pulling you under, leaving you gasping for your own breath. It's not weakness, it's an unrefined gift, a raw sensitivity that Jung saw as a doorway to the deeper self, but one that demands integration to avoid destruction. Now, imagine the turning point, the moment of crisis that forces the healing to begin. It's not a gentle awakening with soft music and incense. It's more like standing at the edge of a chasm, the wind howling around you, urging you to leap into the unknown. Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey toward wholeness, where we confront our shadows, those hidden parts of ourselves we've buried deep to survive. For the empath, the shadow isn't just personal fears or repressed anger. It's the overwhelming flood of external energies that they've internalized as their own. Healing starts with boundaries, not as cold walls, but as living membranes that allow connection without invasion. Think of it as learning to dance with the storm, rather than being swept away by it. Jung's own life was a testament to this. He delved into his dreams, his visions, even his bouts of what some called madness, to emerge with insights that illuminated the human condition. As the empath heals, they begin to discern, this ache is mine, that joy belongs to another. It's painstaking, like peeling layers from an onion, each one bringing tears but also clarity. And in this clarity, something shifts. The empath no longer flees from feeling. They embrace it as a tool, a compass guiding them through the labyrinth of the psyche. But here's where it gets intriguing, where the common myths shatter like fragile glass underfoot. You might think a healed empath becomes a beacon of pure love, floating above the fray, untouched by negativity, perhaps even wielding their sensitivity like a superpower to heal the world. Not quite. Jung's vision is far more nuanced, more human. A healed empath doesn't transcend empathy. They alchemize it into something profound, a bridge to the unconscious realms that most people never dare to cross. They become the interpreter of dreams, not just their own but the collective's, sensing the archetypes at play in everyday interactions. Picture a therapist in a dimly lit office, the air heavy with unspoken truths, where the healed empath listens not just to words, but to the symbols bubbling up from the patient's soul. The recurring motif of abandonment echoing the myth of Persephone, or the fierce independence masking the wounded warrior archetype. Jung believed that empaths, once healed, tap into the anima or animus, the contrasexual soul image that completes us, allowing them to foster genuine connections that heal divides. It's not about absorbing pain anymore. It's about reflecting it back transformed, like a mirror that reveals the hidden beauty in the distortion. Let me paint a scene for you, one that brings this to life. There's a woman named Elena, an empath who spent years crumbling under the weight of others' emotions. Her partner's unspoken frustrations at work seeping into her like ink in water. Her friend's anxieties knotting her stomach until she could barely eat. She hits rock bottom one rainy night, alone in her apartment, the thunder outside mirroring the chaos within. In desperation, she turns to Jung's Man and His Symbols, the pages worn and annotated by countless seekers before her. As she reads, something stirs. A recognition that her sensitivity isn't a curse, but a call to individuation. She begins the work, journaling dreams that unfold like epic tales, meditating in the quiet hours before dawn, seeking therapy where she learns to name her shadows. Months turn into years, and slowly, Elena transforms. She doesn't become aloof or armored. Instead, she becomes a quiet force, a catalyst. At a family gathering where tensions simmer like a pot about to boil over, she doesn't take on the anger. She names it gently. This feels like old wounds resurfacing, doesn't it? And in that naming, the air clears, bonds mend. She's not what you think, a saintly healer dispensing wisdom from on high. She's grounded, integrated, using her empathy to unearth the gold in the mud of human experience. As we delve deeper, consider the emotional rhythm of this transformation, the highs and lows that make it feel so alive. There's the initial resistance, that gut-wrenching fear of setting boundaries, like stepping into a cold river, the shock numbing at first, but invigorating as you wade further. Jung warned of the dangers here, the temptation to project one's own unresolved issues onto others, turning empathy into a weapon of manipulation. But the healed empath navigates this by confronting their persona, that social mask we all wear, stripping it away to reveal the authentic self beneath. It's exhilarating, this unveiling, like emerging from a cocoon into the sunlight, wings still damp but ready to fly. Yet it's not without pain. There are nights of doubt where the old patterns whisper seductively, urging retreat. What keeps them going? Curiosity, that Jungian spark of wonder at the psyche's mysteries. They become explorers of the inner world, mapping territories that others fear to tread. And in doing so, they inspire those around them to embark on their own journeys. Now, envision the peak of this evolution, the moment where the healed empath stands tall, not as a victim of their gift, but as its master. Jung might describe them as the individuated soul, one who has integrated the opposites, light and shadow, feeling and reason, into a harmonious whole. They become the wise one, the oracle in modern guise, offering insights that cut through illusion. But again, not what you think. No crystal balls or ethereal robes. It's the friend who senses your unspoken struggle and offers a question that unlocks your heart. The leader who intuits team dynamics and fosters unity without force. The artist who channels collective emotions into works that resonate across souls. Their power lies in vulnerability, in the courage to feel deeply while remaining centered. It's a quiet revolution, one that ripples outward, healing not through overt acts but through presence. In a world starved for authenticity, the healed empath becomes the reminder that true connection stems from wholeness, not fragmentation. And as this journey unfolds, reflect on how it mirrors our own paths. Perhaps you've glimpsed this in yourself. The times when empathy overwhelmed, but also those flashes of insight where you saw beyond the surface. Jung's legacy invites us all to heal, to become more than we thought possible. The healed empath isn't elevated above humanity. They're deeply embedded in it, a living testament to the potential within us all. They teach us that healing isn't erasure but integration, turning sensitivity into strength, chaos into creation. So, as the forest path widens and the light grows brighter, ask yourself, what shadows are you ready to embrace? What gold lies waiting in your depths? The path opens wider now, the canopy thinning as the last rays of sunlight spill across the forest floor, turning fallen leaves into a carpet of burnished gold. You can almost feel the warmth on your skin, that gentle promise of something vast just beyond the tree line. This is where the healed empath steps fully into their power, not as a distant savior or an untouchable sage, but as a living embodiment of Jung's greatest insight, the self, the unified center where all opposites reconcile. They don't reject the world's pain. They hold it without breaking. They don't flee from conflict. They walk straight into it with eyes wide open, carrying a lantern forged from their own healed wounds. And in that quiet, unwavering presence, something extraordinary begins to happen. People around them start to remember who they really are. Let's linger here for a moment and watch it unfold. Imagine a man named Marcus, once so porous that every argument in his workplace lodged in his chest like shrapnel. He could feel the CEO's buried fear of failure, the intern's imposter syndrome, the quiet resentment simmering between colleagues who smiled too tightly at meetings. For years he coped by dimming himself, speaking less, shrinking his energy, coming home exhausted and hollow. But after the long, solitary work of individuation, dream journals stacked on his nightstand, active imagination sessions where he conversed with figures that rose unbidden from his unconscious, therapy sessions that felt like archaeological digs into his own soul, Marcus changed. Not into someone colder or more guarded, but into someone deeper. One afternoon, during a tense boardroom standoff where voices were rising and alliances fracturing, he simply paused. The room hushed without him asking. He didn't absorb the rage. He witnessed it. And then, with a voice steady as ancient oak, he said, "It feels like we're all protecting something fragile here. What if we named it instead of fighting over it?" In that single moment, the energy shifted. Defenses softened. Truths surfaced. The healed empath had become the container, the alchemical vessel, where raw human material could be transformed without being destroyed. Jung wrote often about the mana personality, that inflated state some reach when they touch archetypal energies and mistake them for personal grandeur. Many spiritual paths warn of this pitfall, and empaths are especially vulnerable. In their unhealed days, they swing between feeling worthless and secretly omnipotent, believing they alone can save others because they feel others so intensely. But the truly healed empath sidesteps this trap entirely. They know the power flowing through them isn't theirs to hoard or brandish. It's transpersonal, belonging to the collective psyche that Jung mapped so fearlessly. They become humble conduits, not gurus on pedestals. Their authority doesn't come from charisma or mystical aura. It comes from congruence. Every part of them aligns. Words, silence, gaze, breath. When they speak, it lands differently because it emerges from a place that has already made peace with darkness. People sense this instinctively, the way animals sense calm in the presence of someone unafraid of wildness. There's a scene I want you to hold in your mind, one that captures the quiet magnitude of this transformation. It's late evening in a small coastal town, the kind where fog rolls in and muffles the world. A healed empath named Sophia sits on a weathered bench overlooking the sea, her coat pulled tight against the chill. A young woman approaches, someone she barely knows from the local cafe, and without preamble sits down and begins to cry. Not polite tears, but the ugly, wrenching kind that come when a life is cracked open. In the past, Sophia would have drowned alongside her, heart racing, stomach twisting, desperate to fix or absorb the pain. But now she simply breathes. She lets the salt wind carry the sobs, lets the vast ocean hold what she no longer needs to carry alone. After a long silence, she asks one question, soft as moonlight on water. What part of you has been waiting to be grieved for a very long time? The young woman gasps, as though someone has finally seen the hidden room inside her where the real wound lives. They talk until the stars come out. When they part, the young woman's steps are lighter, not because Sophia gave advice or energy or even hope, but because she offered unwavering presence, a mirror clear enough to reflect the woman's own wholeness back to her. This is the healed empath's true gift. Not to heal others directly, but to create the conditions where others heal themselves. As we walk further along this path, notice how the air has changed. It's clearer now, charged with possibility. Jung believed that when one person achieves genuine individuation, it exerts a subtle but undeniable influence on the collective. The healed empath becomes a living antidote to our era's fragmentation, social media echo chambers, political tribalism, the exhaustion of constant performance. They don't preach unity. They embody it within themselves first, having woven together the disparate threads of their own psyche. And because of that inner reconciliation, they can sit with contradiction in the outer world without needing to resolve it prematurely. They listen to someone whose views oppose their own and feel the fear or pain driving those views, not as an attack to defend against, but as a human signal worth understanding. In a culture addicted to outrage, this is revolutionary. It doesn't mean agreement or passivity. It means refusing to dehumanize. The healed empath has looked into their own abyss and found it familiar. Therefore, no one else's darkness truly frightens them anymore. Yet this path is not without its solitude. There are evenings when the healed empath sits alone, watching the fire die down to embers, aware that most people will never understand the depth from which they now live. Friends may drift, unsettled by the quiet intensity in their eyes. Romantic partners may leave, unable to match the level of honesty required. But this loneliness is different from the old isolation. It's spacious, like the silence between notes in a piece of music that makes the melody possible. They've learned to companion themselves fully, to meet every arising emotion with curiosity rather than rejection. Jung called this the transcendent function, the creative third that emerges when we hold tension long enough for something new to be born. For the healed empath, this becomes a way of life. Every conflict, every dream, every moment of inexplicable sorrow is material for the inner alchemist. They no longer wait for perfect conditions to create meaning. They create it from whatever the psyche offers. And here, at the edge of the forest where the trees give way to open meadow, we arrive at the deepest truth Carl Jung hinted at, but never fully spelled out for the sensitive soul. The healed empath does not become a better version of the old empath. They become something else entirely, a human being who has remembered their connection to the archetypal realm while remaining firmly rooted in the earth. They are no longer primarily identified with their sensitivity. They are identified with the self that contains it. This is why attempts to label them, lightworker, healer, indigo, starseed, ultimately fall short. Those are personas, helpful perhaps on the way, but temporary. The final form is simply a whole person, radiant not because they glow with borrowed light, but because nothing inside them is at war anymore. If you look closely now, you'll see them everywhere, these quiet revolutionaries. The teacher who sees the giftedness hidden beneath a student's anger, the nurse who holds a dying patient's hand and somehow conveys that love extends beyond the veil, the friend who, when you fall apart, doesn't rush to reassemble you, but trusts your psyche's wisdom to guide the rebuilding. They don't announce their arrival. They don't need recognition. They have integrated the shadow of grandiosity along with every other shadow, so the light that shines through them is steady, unobscured by ego's smoke. As the meadow stretches before us under an infinite sky, feel the invitation settling in your own chest. The journey we've walked together isn't just about understanding the healed empath. It's about recognizing the seed of that same wholeness within you. Whatever your temperament, however deep your wounds, The path of individuation lies open. The forest will meet you where you are. The shadows will rise to greet you, not to destroy you, but to be known. And one day, perhaps sooner than you think, you'll step into a clearing of your own and realize you've become something far greater than you ever imagined. Not because you transcended your humanity, but because you finally, courageously, claimed all of it. The wind moves through the tall grass now, carrying the faint scent of night-blooming flowers. Somewhere in the distance an owl calls, its voice both question and answer. This is what a healed empath becomes, a living threshold between worlds, a reminder that the deepest sensitivity, when met with the fiercest honesty, opens the door to the eternal within the temporal. And in that opening, something ancient and new stirs, the quiet, unstoppable movement toward wholeness that Jung spent his life trying to name. Thank you for walking this far with me. May the path continue to rise to meet your feet.